Good morning, everybody. This is Colin here from Campus to Canton, coming to you with the top 25 recap here for week 9 of college football here. It is Monday morning, Halloween. Happy Halloween, everybody, here. We'll start this one off with a Thursday night game. Utah, number 14, versus Washington State. Utah pulls this one out here 21-17, despite missing their starting quarterback, Cameron Rising, who was never announced as not playing in this one here, frustrating fantasy owners and the announcers on this one. And this was just one of the frustrating parts of playing CFF here. It's honestly one of the best examples of why the auto sub feature from Fantrax is a fantastic thing, because there was no indication that he was not playing in this one. There's no indication of an injury. They were coming off of a bye, and there was no news on this one here. But backup quarterback Bryson Barnes does exactly what you'd ask for a backup, and he leads him to a win. You go 17 of 27, 175 yards and a touchdown. No turnovers here in this one at all. Dalton Kincaid, the number one fantasy tight end, scores a touchdown in this one, but then suffered an injury, and he never returned. Given what I was just saying about there being no news about Cameron Rising, it's going to be very difficult to trust Dalton Kincaid this week, given the shenanigans that Kyle Whittingham likes to play with the injury report and not reporting any news. So that's going to be a situation to monitor all week here in this one. True freshman running back Jalen Glover leads the team in carries in this one, with Tavion Thomas, who not traveling with the team, which we did know that ahead of time. And Micah Bernard was dealing with an injury in this one as well. Jalen Glover goes 20 for 76 and a touchdown here in this one. And this is going to be another situation to monitor moving forward here, as Jalen Glover is a favorite of some members of the Campus to Canton team here, and this could potentially be a breakout for him. On the other side on this one, Cam Ward has a solid but unspectacular game. It's kind of been what we've been seeing for a lot of games for him lately. True freshman running back Jalen Jenkins had also been taking over this backfield lately as well. And he does lead the RBs and carries in this one, which was only 4 carries. So he essentially disappeared here in this one as well. Moving on to the Saturday games. And this one hurts a little bit here. As you guys know, I am a Penn State fan. Penn State, number 13, versus number 2, Ohio State. Ohio State gets the win here in this one, 44-31. Penn State plays better than the score shows, though. Penn State had a 5-point lead into the fourth quarter there, but Sean Clifford turns the ball over 4 times in this one with 3 interceptions and a stripped sack, and Penn State just falls apart at the end of the game. JT Tuimoloau destroyed Penn State's right tackle in this one here, and he had one of the best defensive performances of the year and one of the better defensive performances I've seen in a long time. He had 2 fumble recoveries in this one, a forced fumble, 2 interceptions, a touchdown, 2 sacks, and 3 tackles for a loss, and was just absolutely a one-man wrecking crew, continually setting Ohio State up with positive field position. CJ Stroud has a nice day statistically here with 354 yards. Only has 1 touchdown, though, which doesn't help. Marvin Harrison Jr. has a big day, 10 for 185. And Mayan Williams had a touchdown early in this one, but suffers a wrist injury. And it's going to be something to monitor moving forward as well. Now, this did allow Travion here to lead the team in carries with 16. He has 78 yards and 2 touchdowns on those 16 carries, but honestly, he really struggled to get much going outside of a big 41-yard touchdown run. For Penn State, I already mentioned Sean Clifford struggles here, but Parker Washington was the beneficiary here in this one. Had a breakout game that we were all hoping for, with 11 for 179 and 1. And he has started to come on here of late as well. In the running games, Katron Allen and Nick Singleton shared the backfield almost evenly with 12 and 14 carries respectively, but it was Allen who looked the better of the two in this one, with 76 yards and a touchdown on the ground and another touchdown through the air. And this was the only game of the year so far where true freshman QB Drew Aller did not attempt a pass. I wouldn't read too much into that one. It's mostly just kind of how the game flowed, especially with Penn State having a lead entering into the fourth quarter there. But with the second loss and Penn State essentially out of the Big Ten title race now, I would expect a little more work for Aller coming in the coming weeks. They're gonna probably start to build him up a little bit here, and I wouldn't expect to see him starting anytime soon. But it is starting to become something to legitimately monitor here. Number one, Georgia versus Florida here. Georgia jumps out to an early lead in this one. Florida comes racing back with 17 straight points in the third quarter to make it a one-score game. And then Georgia wakes back up, didn't allow another point, put up two more TDs on their way to the win, and pulls this one out 42-20. Georgia put up 555 yards of offense in this one, with Brock Bowers leading the way in the receiving game with 5 catches for 154 yards and a touchdown. He also had a monster 73-yard touchdown in there too. The running game for Georgia popped off here in this one, despite missing Kendall Milton. Dajuan Edwards racks up 106 yards and 2 scores on the ground. Kenny McIntosh has 90 yards and 2 scores as well. On the other side here, Anthony Richardson predictably struggled at times in this one, going 18 for 37 for 271 yards and a touchdown, and only adding another 19 yards on the ground. There were some positive takeaways here, though, for Florida. Trevor Etienne, true freshman running back, had a nice game with 11 carries for 53 yards and a touchdown on the ground. And through the air, Xavier Henderson had a breakout game. 5 catches, 110 yards, and a touchdown with a long 78-yard TD in there as well. Now, Georgia, coming out of this game, is set up for a huge matchup next weekend against Tennessee for what should be the SEC East title and all but assuring a playoff spot here for the winner. Now, this week, Tennessee number 3 gets Kentucky number 19. And Tennessee just absolutely demolished Kentucky in this one, winning this one 44-6. And it was absolutely never in doubt. Quarterback Hendon Hooker had a modest day by his standards with 245 yards and 3 touchdowns. Wide receiver Jalen Hyatt continued his dominance despite the return of presumed number 1 wide receiver Cedric Tillman. As Jalen Hyatt put up 5 catches for 138 yards and 2 touchdowns to Tillman's 4 catches for 22 yards. Tillman was working his way back from an injury in this one where he had tightrope surgery on his ankle. So I do expect him to build on this performance moving forward, but doesn't seem like Jalen Hyatt is going anywhere now that Cedric Tillman is back. For Kentucky, Will Levis, the quarterback here, showed his supporters exactly what his doubters have been worried about the whole time. He struggled mightily in this one. 98 yards passing, 3.6 yards per attempt, and 3 interceptions. Now, this is even his doubters, by his doubter standards, this is a bad game. He will have better days moving forward. But this is a tough pill to swallow against a pretty average defense here if you were hoping that he was going to be a day one quarterback. In the battle in Michigan, number 4 Michigan versus Michigan State here. Michigan State actually jumped out to a 7-3 lead in the first quarter, and then it was all Michigan from there on out. They won this one 29-7. JJ McCarthy managed another game. He went 15 of 25 for 167 yards and a touchdown and no turnovers. Blake Corum had another ho-hum game where he just rushed for 178 yards. No surprise here on that one. But on the other side, wide receiver Keon Coleman for Michigan State had a big day, going 5 catches for 155 yards and a touchdown. The story coming out of this one, though, was the altercation in the tunnel after the game between 2 players for Michigan and a whole host of players for Michigan State. There reportedly is going to be an investigation in this one, potentially police involvement as well. And this is yet another example of why the setup of the tunnel at the Big House needs to change. There's no reason the biggest stadium in the country needs to have these 2 teams share a tunnel to the locker room. There was a little bit of a scuffle between Michigan and Penn State a few weeks ago as well. And these are just stories that we hear about coming out of there. Number 9, Oklahoma State versus number 22, Kansas State. Kansas State and backup quarterback Will Howard had the biggest win of the day here with a 48-0 win over Oklahoma State. Will Howard played very well, throwing 296 yards and 4 touchdowns, while Deuce Vaughn also had his best game of the year with 158 yards and a touchdown on the ground and another touchdown through the air. For Oklahoma State, nobody really looked good in this one, obviously, as they got blanked. Spencer Sanders struggled to get anything going before ultimately being replaced by Gunnar Gundy late in the game with the outcome already decided. Running back Dominic Richardson did not play in this one. Keep an eye on his status moving forward. Number 10, USC versus Arizona. This ended up being a tight game here with USC hanging on for a 45-37 win. Caleb Williams threw for a career high 411 yards, despite missing his top 2 targets in former Blitnikoff winner Jordan Addison and fellow transfer from Oklahoma Mario Williams. Taj Washington and Kyle Ford picked up the slack in the receiving game here with 7 catches for 118 yards and 2 touchdowns, and 6 catches for 114 yards and 1 touchdown, respectively. Travis Dye had yet another 100-yard game on the ground. That is his 5th on the year, and he continues to be a force in the running game and dominating the carries for a Lincoln Riley offense that does typically share the backfield. Now, for Arizona in this one, Jaden DeLara threw for 3 touchdowns and almost 400 yards. And all of those touchdowns and most of those yards went to sophomore wide receiver Dorian Singer. Singer had an absolutely monster game in this one with 7 catches for 141 yards and 3 touchdowns. He is going to be a candidate for player of the week here in this one, without a doubt. Singer had more touchdowns in this game than he did all season before this. The last game that I'll break down here, number 15, Ole Miss versus Texas A&M. Ole Miss started off slow in this one, looking like they were still kind of reeling from last week's loss to LSU, but they did rebound nicely and jumped out to a 10-point lead early in the second half. And they were ended up able to hold off Texas A&M for the 31-28 win. Happy 19th birthday to Quinshon Judkins. Ran for 205 yards and a touchdown on his birthday here on 34 carries. And he just absolutely dominated the touches in the backfield in this one. Now, Zach Evans did miss last week's game, and he came back here. In this one, he handled 8 carries, going for 75 yards in this one. But the story of the game is Texas A&M true freshman quarterback Connor Wigman, who threw for 334 yards and 4 touchdowns in his first ever collegiate start. He had this offense looking the best that it has all season. This is going to be his job moving forward. And if this performance was any indication of what's to come, this could be actually a decent offense, given all the other pieces that they have here. Devin Achane also had a nice day with 138 yards on the ground and 41 yards and a touchdown through the air. And then with some off the field issues, Chris Marshall suspended indefinitely. 2 wide receivers stepped up here in this one, with Moose Muhammad and Evan Stewart each having a nice day through the air with 118 yards and a touchdown and 88 yards and a touchdown, respectively. And if Wigman can keep up this level of play that we saw here in this one moving forward, both of these wide receivers could finish strong down the stretch and be options for you for fantasy here. All right, that is going to do it for us here in the Top 25 recap. I will be back with you tomorrow morning with Austin to talk a little bit of late season waiver wire pickups. But until then, hit the like button down below, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment there. Let me know about any games that I missed. Let me know any stat lines that I missed here. Anything else you wanted to talk about there, just drop it in a chat down below. That's going to do it for me here today, though. Have a good